So now let's install SQL Server onto our server. The first thing we're going to have to do is go out and get a copy of it. So that can easily be done if you open up Microsoft Edge or whatever browser you have installed and search for Microsoft SQL Server downloads. And if you do that, you'll notice the first one that comes up might not be Microsoft. So these are typically up here because they've paid Google to be up at the beginning, like ads at the beginning of a search. So we want to keep scrolling down until we get to the actual one at Microsoft. So here's one here, Copilot Search brings that up. And if you were to keep going, you'd probably find a couple others at Microsoft down there. But ultimately, this is the one we want. It's actually at Microsoft.com. Microsoft SQL Server downloads. So again, search for Microsoft SQL Server downloads, and then scroll until you find the actual Microsoft link, and then go ahead and click it. And when you do, it'll bring you to the SQL Server downloads page. And when you scroll down, you'll notice there's several versions of SQL Server. There's this on-premises, there's Azure, there's Developer, and there's Express. We want to get Express because it's free. So we're going to go ahead and download SQL Server 2022 Express. There's new versions coming out all the time. 2022 has been out for several years now. So whatever the latest version is probably okay to install. Once it's downloaded, go ahead and install it. You could do just the basic install. And then hit agree. They're going to do all sorts of data collection and other things. And then install location is fine, and click install. And it might take, again, a couple minutes to install, so you just got to be patient. And I'll come back and join you once the install is complete. And we're back. As you can see, SQL Server does take a while to install. But once you get to this screen, you're pretty much done. One thing we still want to do is install SSMS, or SQL Server Management Studio. SSMS is a program that will let us manage our databases. And it's nice that they provide a link to it right here at the end of the install. So let's go ahead and click that. And it'll bring us right to the page for installing. And if you scroll around, you should find this download SSMS link here. So we're going to go ahead and click that. And it will download it. And then we just open it to install. And once that's open and installing, you'll see it's right here. We can go ahead and close the SQL Server Express Edition because we're done with that. I'm sure you want to exit, yes. And now we're on the Visual Studio installer. So SQL Server Management Studio is part of Visual Studio. This is separate from Visual Studio Code, which we've been using in class. Visual Studio is a much more powerful enterprise level development product. So this is just one piece of it. So let's go ahead and hit continue. And again, it should install. All right, so when it completes the last part, you should show up at this screen here. This will allow you to install other things that you want, but as you can see here, the SQL Server Management Studio core components are already selected. So we're just going to leave all this stuff alone, and we're going to click install down here. And again, you'll see it installing. And I will join you when this completes. And when you get here, your installation is complete. So we can go ahead and close Visual Studio Installer. Now that we've completed the install of SQL Server, now we need to do some configuration just to make sure everything is working. So let's go ahead and click Start. And then we're going to click on Microsoft SQL Server 2022. And then we're going to click on the Configuration Manager. There's a few things we need to check in here. So first, we want to look at this SQL Server up here. You know, it's running. That's good. That means it can start. Now we have to configure it to allow network connections. So we're going to come down here to SQL Server Network Configuration. Notice there's a 32-bit version and just a regular. We don't want the 32-bit version. We want this one down here. It's got an arrow next to it. We'll click the arrow, and you'll see Protocols for SQL Express. So go ahead and click on it. And here are three protocols, and you'll notice TCP/IP is disabled. And if we want to use IP addresses and connect to it, we have to make sure that's enabled. So let's go ahead and right click on that and click enable. And it's going to give us a little statement saying, hey, this isn't going to take effect until you restart SQL Server, which is fine. Go ahead and click OK. And there's one more thing in here we need to check. So we should all know what TCP/IP is now, right? That's the protocol we talked about that uses IP addresses. So this will now accept connections from IP addresses, but now we have to set the port. So go ahead and right click on TCP/IP and click properties. And now you'll see the TCP/IP properties window. Go ahead and click on the IP addresses tab right here. And this will list all of the IPs. If you scroll down to the very bottom, you'll find one that says IP all. Now the port, the default port for SQL Server is 1433. It should be entered here, but for some reason, sometimes it's not. So let's come down here and type in 1433 and click OK. Again, it will tell you need to restart for the changes to take effect, so click OK. Now let's go back up to SQL Server Services and let's restart. So you can right click on this and click restart, and you'll see it will stop and restart the service. When that is complete, we should be able to connect to SQL Server. And so that'll be the next thing we do. We're going to connect to SQL Server, make sure we can connect, and if we can, then your install is successful. So once that's complete, you can go ahead and close out of Configuration Manager, and let's click Start and go to Microsoft SQL Server Tools. So SQL Server 2022 is where your SQL Server is. Tools is where your Management Studio is. And Management Studio is our interface to SQL Server. It's what we're going to use to actually interact with SQL Server. So let's go ahead and launch SQL Server Management Studio. You'll note when it starts up, it's going to ask you to sign in. You can sign in with Microsoft or GitHub, but you can also do skip and add accounts later, which is what we're going to do because we have no reason to use those things. So go ahead and click skip and add accounts later. And when that comes up, you'll be given a dialog that will allow us to connect. And keep in mind, we are running SQL Server Management Studio on the same computer as our SQL Server. Often you won't do that. You'll be connecting to a machine somewhere else. So here you're going to put the server name. Now you could put your IP address, but because they're both on the same machine, you can just type localhost, and that's a shortcut to be able to connect to it. Finally, make sure your encryption, it may be set to mandatory. Make sure it's set to optional. We're not going to set up a certificate and all of that stuff. We're just going to set optional encryption. This may not be the most secure way of doing it, but we're just doing this for a test and for learning, and it's the easiest way to get through it. So go ahead and hit connect now. And if all goes well, you will see that you have connected to your server, and it's listing all of your objects here, your databases and so on. If you hit the plus next to your database, you'll see there's system database and database snapshots and so on. So in future videos, we're going to be creating a database and learning how to work with it.